Hello, welcome inside Fever Insider. Brian Haenchen, Khloe Peterson here with you. We have upgraded the spot. Dustin, we're not going to tell you where we are because we want you to actually watch further in than the first minute or so. So we're going to get to our first topic, and then we will discuss where we are sitting. You won't guess where we are. You will be surprised. Fever win tonight. They defeat the Phoenix Mercury 107-101. Season high 107 points for the Fever. We also attempted a league high 38 free throws in the win. Ari McDonald, as you can see there along the bottom, career high 27 points for her. She was phenomenal. Aaliyah Boston, again, just very workmanlike, very quiet. 22 points, 12 rebounds for her. Sophie Cunningham, 12 points. Demiris Dantas, 12 points. Khloe Bibby rounds out the double-digit scores with 10. Khloe, before we let you talk, we're just going to jump into the first audio file. Tonight was the return for DeWanna Bonner. Of course, who had a tumultuous run with the Fever. She returned. The reception was about what everybody thought. Before we get Khloe's thoughts, we're going to throw it to an audio file from tonight post-game. Khloe Copper addressed the media and was asked about the reception that her teammate received. Here's what she had to say.
I think she handled it well. I don't understand, like, she a legend, and just all the things that she's done for the league, and just the disrespect, I can't get down with it. They booed her. She didn't say a word to the crowd. People talk some trash to her, but we had her back. But it's just very distasteful for what their fan base is doing, as far as when it comes to DB, because it's like she's just the sweetest soul, and the situation didn't work for her, and that's just not what she wanted or whatever. But it's just, we don't need all of that. It's just unnecessary.
Did you talk to her during the game, I guess, just try and pick her spirits up, or is that something that you guys really discussed?
No, we weren't really worried. We just was just like, whatever. Like, some people said some things, but it just was like, whatever. Like, we did it all night, so it was like just not something that we wanted to give our energy to. But she handled it well. Yeah, she handled it well.
When you say people were saying things, just fans in the stands, or?
Yeah, fans. They booed her. Some people said some stuff about her leaving, just yelling,
Yeah. Khloe?
My thoughts? That is about the reception I expected, fans to have from DeWanna Bonner returning. Obviously, she only played in Indiana for 9 games, and there were 5 games where she was out for personal reasons, and then, she kind of got waived unceremoniously. But I think, obviously getting booed is a part of sports in general at this point. Like, obviously, I think back to LeBron James getting booed when he went back to Cleveland after he spent, whoever knows how long, a decade there. So, like, I don't think it was something unexpected, probably from DeWanna Bonner's camp and everything. I think it's just something, fans are going to have opinions, and fans, especially Indiana Fever fans, they don't necessarily care, I would say, about DeWanna Bonner's legacy. Like, obviously, she is a WNBA great. She has a great legacy in Phoenix, but that's also in Phoenix. Fever fans don't care necessarily about what she did, with the Mercury and what she's doing now with Phoenix. And they think about, she was a marquee signing in the offseason, and she left unceremoniously from the Fever with kind of no explanation, and then kind of went back to Phoenix, which, it's great that she found a spot that she likes, but it's also not surprising that, it left a bad taste in the mouths of Fever fans.
Yeah, and to your point of that just kind of being about sports, it's exactly what Phoenix coach Nate Tibbett said. He's like, that's professional sports. Sometimes things don't work out, and that just, fans are passionate and emotional, and that's how they react. And I personally see both sides. And when we were talking about this with Tony West after the game as well, Tony East, West, South, sorry, Tony, he's not watching. Tony, whatever direction. But I can see both sides. On the one hand, I see what her teammate says, in that it is a little aggressive, and it is, I think, a little odd, seeing as she was just here for 9 games. Like, Ari McDonald has been here for more games at this point. On the other hand, like you said, it's sports, and that's just kind of the way of life, and there's no point in getting upset over spilled milk in a way. And I like that Stephanie White kind of pointed out, like, sometimes things don't work out. It's a business, and it doesn't change your opinion of DB as a person, and that she still respects the heck out of her and all that.
Yeah, I think obviously she was only in Indiana for 9 games, but I think she was so hyped up. She's obviously the longest tenured active player in the league right now, and people were so excited to have her. Like, her teammates, her Fever teammates, were so excited to have her, and then for it to kind of end the way it did, obviously leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. And I think this game would probably be the worst of it, with it being her first time coming back to Indiana, but they're not coming back for the rest of the season anymore anyway. Indiana will head to Phoenix twice before the end of the regular season, but yeah, I think this was the worst of it, and maybe fans will get over it by next year, and who knows.
It was impressive. I mean, every time she touched the ball, basically she got booed, and then the second that she checked in, within a minute, she got fouled and stepped to the line for free throws, and that's when you heard. I think we heard it up top, but somebody yelling "quitter" and all that stuff. But that was interesting. And is there anything else you'd like to add on the Bonner thing before we reveal where we're sitting?
I don't think so.
This is the crossover episode of A Generation. We're sitting at a scores table, which, of course, I host a show called The Scores Table on IndyStar.com. Be sure to check it out. It's a girls basketball podcast. It's very popular. I host it. Khloe's been a guest on there once. Pretty big moment for her professionally. She's called it a highlight, a high watermark for herself. I thought that was a little dramatic, but it was appreciative. And as you can see, Dustin there stands behind us and not walls of a gulag. So thanks for watching, bud. Khloe, let's talk about the game itself. Obviously, that was really impressive. I think it ranks up there with the win over New York a couple months ago, and then the subsequent win in the Commissioner's Cup when they went up to Minneapolis and took it to the Lynx to win the trophy.
Yeah, I think this was one of the games they needed to, prove themselves as one of the top teams, or a team that can compete against the top teams in the league. Like, obviously they've been a bit inconsistent, but they've had those wins over New York, or over Minnesota, as you've mentioned. And the Mercury, I believe, are number 3 in the league right now, and they are considered a championship contender with an MVP candidate in Alyssa Thomas. So to be able to get this kind of win, even though you give up 101 points when you score 107, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So I think this was a really good confidence building win, their 3rd win in a row, and it'll be good for them going into this kind of grueling 4-game, like 7-day, 8-day long road trip for them.
The defense seems like it's, I guess, do you want to start with the defense? They gave up all those points, but it seemed like they had Phoenix off kilter, out of sorts there for long stretches. And unlike the Minnesota game where it was the Lynx missing a lot of shots, tonight it was the Fever kind of asserting themselves, generating turnovers. They forced that shot clock violation, I remember, late in the game, or late in the second half, right before a TV timeout, I think, and the crowd went berserk, and that was kind of like a tilting point in that game. And there really wasn't a point necessarily where it felt like Phoenix was getting back into that thing.
Yeah, obviously the first quarter, Fever were down. It was 30-20, I believe. But then kind of the rest of the way, they had that control. And it wasn't really a defensive-heavy game, obviously, with the 107-101 score. But it seemed like, Indiana never let Phoenix get kind of into a rhythm, in a sense, which is kind of funny to say when they scored 101 points, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
But, whenever Phoenix scored, Indiana had an answer. And, they went on that 12-0 run, I believe it was in the second quarter, to retake that lead. And I don't know if they ever really gave that lead up again. So it was really an all-around effort too. Khloe Bibby, who's on a 7-day contract, she had double-digit points. Erin McDonald obviously had that career high. Aaliyah Boston had those 17 fourth quarter points to really create that separation after they were only up by 2 at the end of the third quarter. So it was really, I think, one of those all-around efforts that teams love to see, in the sense of it wasn't really any one person taking over the game. It was everybody having that contribution.
On the other end of the floor to score 107 points against that Phoenix defense, that's super impressive. And at the forefront is Erin McDonald, who ironically didn't have a team at the start of the season, right?
Yeah, I think obviously she got waived she was one of the final cuts from the Sparks, so she kind of went into the beginning of the season without a team. And it's really impressive how she came into Indiana first on a hardship contract, really impressed them to the point where they told her to wait. So they were able to bring her back after that 10-day waiting period. And she's been that consistent piece for them ever since, especially with Caitlin Clark having these injuries and being out for right now an undetermined period of time, and even before then with that left groin injury being out, Erin McDonald has really stepped up into that starting lineup, and she's able to play that transition offense like Clark plays. Kind of not exactly, obviously, but she's able to push the pace in transition like they weren't able to do before they had McDonald and with Clark out. And she's really been a great addition that I think they weren't expecting for this season.
It is. It's funny how this stuff works out, isn't it? I mean, when they waived DeWanna Bonner, right? That's when they signed Erin McDonald the extended contract. Somebody else we're talking about, Aaliyah Boston. I mentioned it after the Chicago game, and that was very genuine surprise. It's like, oh, she had 14 points. Tonight, the same thing. Oh, she scored the first 12 or 14 points of the fourth quarter. Oh, she has, another double-double. I mean, she's just so quietly consistent and workmanlike through the entire game. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, this was her fourth consecutive double-double, and I agree with it being kind of a quiet 22 points she had and those 17 in the fourth quarter. Like, she doesn't do those big flashy plays like we saw with Sophie Cunningham making that three and then getting fouled and then 4-point play that made the crowd go wild. That's not really obviously something that happens with layups and with AB's game, but she's like one of the most consistent players, if not the most consistent player on Indiana's team this year. And I think they really appreciate how consistent she is and just how much she can crash glass and just be that workman or that workhorse for the Fever.
One big picture question before we get to some of the off the court stuff, Khloe. With the Fever, do you think that they are closer to what we saw tonight or what we've seen, like, I don't know, let's just say New York or earlier in the season, what was it, Las Vegas, when they squandered a big lead? Like, where do you think that this team sits? Because we've kind of seen both ends of the spectrum where they look insanely good, like world beaters tonight, Minnesota, New York, and then the other end of the spectrum where you're kind of getting throttled by New York. You're blowing leads in Las Vegas. Obviously, different points of the season, different circumstances, but just generally, which end of the spectrum do you think this team is closer to?
I think they're closer to, the contenders, or not, maybe not necessarily contenders, but, the middle of the pack, spectrum there. Like, they're improving every game. They obviously had that really big game against Chicago on Sunday, which, Chicago's not that great of a team this year, but I think this win against Phoenix was a stepping stone for them, and especially it being without Caitlin Clark too, because she's been the engine that pushes them all of last year and then obviously the beginning of this year. And I think for them to be able to get this consistency without Caitlin, and I know Coach Steph White has kind of mentioned this in terms of for a while it was touch and go on if Caitlin would play. She had the left quad injury, then the left groin injury, and now the right groin injury. But right now she doesn't have a timetable for return, meaning she's going to be out for who knows how long. It all depends on how she recovers because, she's never really been through these types of muscle injuries before. So they're really just going based on how her body reacts to rehab and recovery. But I think Steph White mentioned how it was good that they have some consistency and, they know Caitlin's not going to be playing. They know how to game plan. They don't have to make two separate game plans of, here, like we practice this for if Caitlin's playing, we practice this for if Caitlin's not playing. They know Caitlin's not playing. So they're able to kind of be consistent and be, pretty intentional with those practices. And I think that's really helped them.
It is fascinating looking back, having seen this team in chunks at the beginning of the season till now, how much they have improved. Like, you can finally start seeing those results and you're kind of seeing them more consistently. Like, before, performances like this felt like flashes in the pan, but now it's like, it's not expected because, like, what they did tonight, like, that was pretty high level stuff, but they're playing that level. Like the Chicago game, that was kind of expected, and you can see it coming consistently. And they talk a lot about stacking days, and that's coach speak and that. But that doesn't make it untrue. Just because it's cliche doesn't mean that it's untrue, which has been fun to see with this group. And I think there's also something to be said about the chemistry. I'm sure you've heard it ad nauseum. I've certainly heard it ad nauseum. Just how much they like playing with and for each other, and I think that makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Like, obviously, they had a lot of new faces with Sophie coming in, obviously Ari McDonald and Khloe Bibby were mid-season additions too, but they've really built that chemistry that they've needed to have to stack the days, as Steph White likes to say. So yeah, they've really built that chemistry even with Caitlin out.
All right, so you have 4 road games coming up. You go to
Mhm.
Dallas on Friday, Seattle on Sunday, Los Angeles, and Cameron Brink, who is back
Yes.
next Tuesday, followed by a trip to Mercury in Phoenix on Thursday. There's 4 games. What do you expect them to do, and what do you think would be like? What's reasonable, I guess, to expect? What do you think is going to happen over those 4? Like, just give me a record.
I would say 3-1.
Oh,
Maybe 2-2 or 3-1. Obviously, they've shown that they can beat the Mercury, but they're also going to be on the tail end. It's their 4th game of the 4-game road trip, but I think they can beat the Wings, and they can beat the Sparks for sure. Like, obviously, they had that second half meltdown against the Sparks earlier this season, so they hope that's not going to happen again. But I think this will really be a test for them to see if they can, be that consistent team that they want to be and avoid those second half meltdowns like they had against Los Angeles here earlier this season.
is it too dramatic to say that should be kind of the benchmark, 3-1?
I would say that. I could. The Storm are a good team. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost to the Storm, but all the other 3, I would
feel like
expect
winnable
wins.
games.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some trade line stuff quickly. So Khloe and I think the plan is that next week on Thursday, tentatively, we're looking at going live with Fever Insider, her and I talking trade deadline, etc. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be on the IndyStar YouTube page. But just quickly, Khloe, we were talking about this as we were game planning trade deadline coverage, and that it's not a very active league at the trade deadline. Why?
Yeah, I mean, no team is very active at the trade deadline because of the hard salary cap that the WNBA has. So it's really difficult to make a mid-season trade. Like, obviously the Fever ran into that when they were trying to trade DeWanna Bonner earlier this season. She requested a trade. They couldn't find something suitable because she was on a $200,000 contract. And it's really hard to trade a contract of that caliber when your salary cap is 1.3, 1.4 million. So usually there aren't that many big trades in the W. The Aces traded, or the Wings traded Melissa Smith to the Aces for just a first round pick, and those are usually the types of trades that you see at the deadline, if anything. I believe last year the only trade that happened near the deadline was Marina Mabry from Chicago to Connecticut, and that took 2 players from Connecticut back to Chicago and the draft pick. So usually you see the big trades like the 4-team trade that Indiana was involved in the offseason because obviously there's less finagling with the salary cap, but I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana doesn't do anything at the trade deadline, really. And if they do, it would be something where maybe they get a player for a draft pick, or maybe they, I don't know, trade a player away for a draft pick.
What are the Fever's needs? We'll find that out next week again, Thursday, tentatively. Be sure to follow us on social media for updates on that. And tying into this as we bring things home here, Khloe Bibby, she's 2 games into her Fever tenure. She played 13 minutes tonight, 10 points, 2 for 4 shooting with a couple threes, a steal and an assist. Against Chicago, she played 11 minutes at 8 points, 2 triples there as well. Also, I mean, a positive plus-minus rating tonight and the other night as well. We've talked about the lineup stuff during the last show. Go listen if you missed that. But you mentioned during the game that Friday, by the time that they leave Indianapolis, they're going to have to make a decision on her. For starters, what do you think will happen? What do you think should happen?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to make a decision because they'll leave for Dallas Thursday, and Khloe Bibby's contract, or her 7-day, will expire on Friday. So they're going to have to make that decision if they want to keep her, on Thursday before they leave, or else, she won't be going on the road trip. But I would imagine they would sign her to a second 7-day. So teams are able to sign a single player to up to 3 7-day contracts. And assuming they re-sign Khloe Bibby, it would be her second 7-day contract. And I think there's no harm really in signing her to a second 7-day because if they do decide to be active at the trade deadline, if they decide to bring in another player, they are able to, waive her without any penalty monetarily. Like, at this point in the season, all regular contracts are guaranteed. So, Brianna Turner's contract is guaranteed for the rest of the season. So if they wanted to trade for a player and waive her, they would still owe her money for the rest of the season. But that's not the case with Khloe Bibby. So I don't see anything wrong with signing her for another 7-day at the very least to get through the trade deadline. Then if they decide not to be active at the trade deadline, if they want to keep her, they can sign her to either a third 7-day or sign her for the rest of the season. But that rest of the season contract would automatically become guaranteed.
What do you think they should do?
Like trade deadline or?
With Khloe Bibby specifically. Like, let's say they stand pat, which seems like a reasonable prediction. What should they do with her?
I think they should sign her to a rest of season contract, whether it's, they sign her to a 7-day and then to the rest of the season, or to a third 7-day after the second and then to a rest of season contract. But I think, in the small sample size they've had in these 2 games, she's been very impressive. And I see it similar as the 3 games Ari McDonald played when she was on that hardship contract in early June.
It's a good comparison.
They've both been really impressive in these small stints with the Fever. And I think, Khloe Bibby fits that stretch 4 that they've been looking for, maybe what they thought Katie Lou Samuelson was going to do last year, but she kind of struggled in that role. But Khloe Bibby has really been impressive for the Fever this season in being able to stretch the floor, run in transition, and just fit the style of their play.
Good stuff. This episode's doing 20 minutes, which is twice as long as our normal episode. Nice. So this will scratch the itch until we come back to you guys again. That'll probably be on Thursday, and we will be live. So whenever we do one of these again, we will be live taking your questions, talking about the trade deadline, whatever else comes up, Khloe's exploits on the road. In the meantime, we both have just buckets of content. I have stories on Sophie Cunningham and her podcast, the Kalia Copper's response to DeWanna Bonner being booed. Khloe has her story from tonight on Aaliyah Boston as well. As a story about DeWanna Bonner leading into this and her return. What else you got coming, features and non-game coverage wise, since you'll be on the road with the team here?
I mean, obviously the story of they're playing 5 games in 8 days with 4 of them on the road. And I know there was a tweet from Rebecca Lobo last week, I believe, that got a lot of attention, where, the cadence between games has gone from 4 days in between games in 2020 to 2 days in between games this year. And I think that's been a big issue for teams and for coaching staffs or players, and being able to get adequate rest and being able to, prepare adequately for these games. And I think that's a big topic that's been going around, and that's something I'm hoping to write about and talk to the Fever players about while on the road. And
not to steal your thunder, but something that people will compare it to is like the NBA. Well, like, why is it different than the NBA? Mm-hmm. And as Stephanie White alluded to before the game, it's different because the NBA, you're able to stack days in a specific region. So like if you're out on the East Coast, you kind of stay out there, whereas in the WNBA, you're bouncing around, and they're not necessarily short trips. Like this one coming up, you're going from Dallas, Dallas to Seattle?
To LA to Phoenix and back. And I know, like, even thinking about the Pacers, they have, Cleveland within 5 hours. They have Detroit within 4 hours, Chicago within 3 hours, Milwaukee within 4 hours. And the only, I guess, in a couple of years, the W will have Cleveland and Detroit. But right now, the only team within, reasonable driving distance for the Fever are Chicago. Everywhere else they fly. Mm-hmm. And there's not really any other team within 8 hours of the Fever other than Chicago. So it's just a lot more travel, a lot more time zone jumping than the NBA.
That's Khloe Peterson. I'm Brian Haenchen, coming to you live from the Scores Table. Again, a really good podcast that everyone should check out in a couple months on, somewhere, youtube.com/IndyStar. Hank, don't tell anybody that I'm promoting that channel, but that's channel you should follow. We will talk to you guys next week again live on the IndyStar YouTube page. We thank you all so much for watching. Thank you so much for reading. We'll talk to you again soon.